Good evening, everybody. This is Dr. Serge. So I came across an article, very interesting article actually, that got published a few weeks ago. It was about beef. There's a lot of confusion and myth and misunderstanding when it comes to the consumption of beef. I mean, we've been told for 40, 50 years that saturated fat, cholesterol from beef, for example, it's a no-no, you shouldn't eat it, it's bad for your heart, it's bad for your brain, it's bad for your liver, it's bad for everything. So is that the truth to that? So there was an article that got published, and I first noticed this article when I came across this one, actually in Science Daily. Really, the title caught my attention. The title was "The Mediterranean Diet with Lean Beef May Lower the Risk Factors for Heart Disease." And then when you look into the actual study, so that was published 3 weeks ago, like I said. So the effect of varying quantities of lean beef as a part of a Mediterranean style dietary patterns on lipids and lipoproteins. So randomized crossover control feeding trial. So basically what they did as a foundation is they took the Mediterranean diet and they added beef to it, and more and more and more, up to 10 times more beef than the actual diet. And they compared those different diets to the American diet. So we can see the design of the study here. So when you go down the article, this is the design. As you can see, it's a feeding study. So for 4 weeks, they took more than 50 people. For 4 weeks, they gave the same diet. And then they had what they call a 1 week washout. So they would eat whatever, and then they go for another 4 weeks for the next diet, and then another week of washout, they eat whatever, and then another 4 weeks of the diet, and then so on and so on. So the initial diet was the Mediterranean diet with 0.5, I believe was 0.5 ounce of red beef, red meat, beef. And then they did 2.5 ounces, and then 5.5 ounces, like I said, 10 times more red meat to the Mediterranean diet. So it's a bit confusing when they say Mediterranean diets, because when you go see what that part of the world eat, they eat all kind of diet, and a lot of it actually, like the Greeks, for example, eat a lot of lamb, a lot of goat milk products like cheese, yogurt, and so on. So, and then they look at the lipid profile of, I'm trying to go down to the table here. So they look at the lipid profile of those people who eat these different diets. And then it was really interesting what they found. Okay, this is the table I wanted to see. So we can see here, so they look at total cholesterol, they look at the non-HDL, they look at the LDL cholesterol, they look at HDL. HDL is the good cholesterol. They look at the TG, the triglyceride, and they look, really interestingly, at two really critical markers of heart disease, ApoA1 and ApoB. So these two proteins are part of the carrier particles, LDL and HDL. So these are the ones that actually carry the fats around into the bloodstream. So these are really strong markers of heart disease, much stronger than HDL, LDL, or total cholesterol. So it's really interesting that they look at that. So when you look at the different diet, we can see the trend here for total cholesterol. So the baseline was 192.6 blood levels of cholesterol. And then when they go to the actual MED 5.5, this is 5.5 ounces of beef. So it went down more than 15 points. So adding beef lowered the total cholesterol. And then they did the same thing for LDL. So LDL started at 109 and it went down to 102. So it lowered as well. So HDL cholesterol 55, it went down 3 points. So more or less the same. Triglyceride, really surprisingly, it's at 105. So 105 triglyceride is an indication. It's a marker of our carbs, glucose, carbohydrate, sugar consumption. So 105 is kind of high to me. I don't like to see something that high. So that tells me that the baseline diet was kind of high in carbs, sugar, okay? But despite all that, so when they added to that baseline 5.5 ounces of diet, the triglyceride went down 20 points. So that means beef helps lower triglyceride and lower total cholesterol, LDL. Interestingly, this is really the exciting part of this diet, is this experiment, I should say, is when you look at these two markers, we can see the ApoA1 started at 148 and it went down to 140. Like I said, these are really strong markers for heart disease, better than lipid profiles. So that means that adding red meat, beef, in that case, lower your risk of heart disease. And same thing with the ApoB, 94 went down to 6 points. So all these different numbers are traditional markers for heart disease. And all those markers are lower when they added beef to the diet. So what does that mean? So what that means is at the end of the day that beef is not an issue. Beef is not a problem when it comes to heart disease. I know there's a lot of confusion on there, but there's a lot actually of studies like this one. This is the feeding studies, which is a bit different than the other types of studies. But that shows that in actual people's body, when you look at the lipid profiles, when they eat beef, along with other food, it does help to lower your cholesterol, the LDL, the triglyceride, and your apoproteins, which at the end of the day indicate a lower risk of heart disease. It makes sense because if you look at the population that eat the most red meat, for example, the Japanese, not a lot of people don't realize that the Japanese eat a lot of red meat. There's one of the highest consumption of beef in the world. Same thing with the States. Sweden eat a lot of beef. So if you look at the population who eat a lot of beef, the Swedish and the Japanese are the top two population that live the longest, the healthiest, and they consume beef. So at the end of the day, it's not an issue. The question we need to make sure, though, to answer is the quality of the beef. This one was not specifically grass-fed, organic, and so on. So I expect that if you do consume grass-fed beef, organic, non-vaccinated animals, they don't use pesticides, no grain-fed, all that stuff, you will get better results because they use traditional beef here. And we know that the way that we raise the cattle today, traditionally, it's not that healthy. They eat a lot of corn, a lot of grains, and so on. So I would expect better results. And it would be nice, actually, to see a study done with grass-fed beef, because grass-fed beef have a healthy ratio of omega-6 over omega-3. So conventional beef may have a ratio of 15-20 omega-6 over 1 omega-3, which actually can cause inflammation. So a normal ratio is something over 4 or 5 over 1, which grass-fed beef does have. And grass-fed beef does have a lot of what we call CLA. So this is a molecule that helps burning fat, and it has anti-cancer properties. So I will expect if you eat grass-fed beef, you will get better results. People will get healthier. So don't be concerned with beef. It's not an issue. What we need to make sure is we do get grass-fed beef, which is much healthier for you. Beef is considered by many to be a superfood. It has a lot of nutrients, much more than vegetables, for example. And livers, for example, is one of the best food you can eat. Beef liver has basically all the nutrition that the body needs to survive. So I do recommend to consume some organ meat on a weekly basis. Actually, you could eat 10, 15 ounces of liver a day, actually, and it's non-toxic. A lot of people are concerned about that. But liver is really powerful. It helps detoxing and bring all the nutrition that you need. If you can do organ meats, make sure you get your cut of beef with fat. You can use sweat or tallow, which is the fat from the beef that is really healthy, actually really high in fat-soluble vitamin, like vitamin A, for example. So beef is part of a healthy diet. Don't stress about it. So just have a good steak with good fat and with your veggies on the side, and you're all good to go. So thank you guys for watching. God bless you.